Apple has pregnant men emojis, real thing.
Yeah, and
that your
true.
kids and grandkids are exposed to. And it is hate speech at Google and many college campuses to say only women can become pregnant.
Wouldn't it be awful to be so lost, to be so without identity that you don't even know if you're a boy or a girl? That is the culture we're living in because we've thrown off God's moral order. And when we sin in sexuality, listen, sexuality is about creating identities. So when we break the gift about creating identities, our own identity ultimately is destroyed. And I say, I don't even know if I'm a boy or a girl anymore.
And it doesn't stop there. I mean, recent revelations out of California, an alarming lawsuit, a mother who is suing a group of teachers for actually recruiting her daughter into becoming a transgender, right? With some very, very specific allegations in the lawsuit. And the teachers have admitted this in private closed-door sessions in the California Teacher Union. So this is a very interesting point, right, where it starts with and this is kind of where liberalism, not leftism, two totally different things, at times can all of a sudden reach a very troubling kind of chapter, if you will. The last chapter in liberalism is authoritarianism. And so liberalism is always like, hey, there's these groups of people, they're really downtrodden, we need to give them rights, we need to give them privileges, we need to give them status and acceptance because they've been, treated terribly. Now, sometimes those liberal groups are right. Let me be clear. Small L liberal groups of women's suffrage or the anti-slavery movement, that those were legitimate concerns. But almost always it goes from there, and the activists, they don't stop. They see they're making progress to the inevitable last chapter, which is like, okay, so we got the Vanity Fair thing, and you all call Bruce Jenner Caitlyn Jenner now. Cool. Okay, phase one. Phase two, we're now going to have chemical castration and sexual reassignment surgery paid for by taxpayers without parental consent for 12, 13-year-olds in California and Oregon. That's the law of the land in Oregon. It's about to be in California, right? That's phase two. But then it's like, okay, we got that into law of the books. That's not enough. Now we need to train our activists to create more transgender people.
Right.
And so you call it the slippery slope, you call it whatever you want. I just kind of call it the devolving kind of chapters of liberalism. And this is a very dangerous thing. Absent God's law and morality and restraints, if you focus on always just trying to break people of the shackles that allegedly exist, and largely they're overly inflated, issues that, especially in today's America, almost immediately that will turn into a revenge campaign and a recruitment campaign.
Right.
And you might say, oh, Charlie, come on, you're over-exaggerating. Arizona Christian University came out with a study right down the street, great school, that 40% of young people ages 16 to 22 are gay, bisexual, or transgender, okay? 40%. Now, you might think you don't believe it. I didn't at first, okay? I said this on our national radio program. I said this on our podcast. I said, I don't believe these numbers. No way, not happening. I got hundreds of emails of parents saying, Charlie, 16 out of 22, like 16 out of 20 of the kids in my daughter's class are either lesbian, gay, or bisexual. It's like a trendy thing now, right? It's almost like a thing that you almost get a social kind of currency with, right? And some people say, well, Charlie, what's so wrong with that? Look, I'm not going to get too deep into it. I'll let the pastor. Your civilization literally can't continue, okay? Like, I don't have to overthink this, but you literally can't replicate,
right?
Okay?
Exactly.
So don't have to really think too deeply about that one.
Just to tag along, Charlie, part of that sexual anarchy chapter, I go through Sodom and Gomorrah, not very often preached about topic on Sunday morning. I was preaching through the life of Abraham, and I was doing verse by verse, and I ended up spending 3 weeks in Sodom and Gomorrah, and I discovered a couple of things. One of the things is those cities, if you match the name of the city with the king of that city, Sodom, it means place of burning, and Gomorrah essentially means place of drowning. So you have the king that his name means son of evil, and the other king's name means destruction. But there are two pictorial symbols here. One is burning, scorching, right? The other is drowning. And they are two natural gifts outside of the bounds of blessing. How many people know that a river, when it's inside the riverbed, is amazing, right? We fish, take our kids down to the water, it's a great time. How many know when the flood comes to our door, it's horrific, it's a horror. The same thing with a fire, and a fire is incredible, and we sit there with our kids and we get warmed by it, but if you take that fire and you say, you know what, I don't need restraints, this is a stupid idea, fireplaces are so dumb, right? They're so archaic. And you take the fire and you place it on the floor of the living room, we all die. All of us die. And the picture of Sodom and Gomorrah is the natural gift of sexuality outside of the bounds of constraint which create blessing, and it consumes an entire society. And we are in the midst of that consuming right now. And the only thing we can do is call on Jesus and offer this thing that says God has this incredible beauty. He initiated us in this garden, this paradise. That's what he has for us. And this other lie is something that will consume us. And don't let the blessing become a curse by letting it go outside of the borders and boundaries that God gave it.
Amen. Let's start lining up for some questions. But I told you would love David. I mean, he's really special. And just to kind of piggyback off that point, David, which is, you'll know it by the fruit, right? It's the most suicidal, medicated, alcohol-addicted, despondent generation in history. It's also the most sexually promiscuous, least moral guardrails in history. And one would think that there might be a connection between the two of them. So we'll take questions. I'm always kind of really moved by studying the left. I do it so you guys don't have to. And I thought one of the most amazing moments in the last year is like, okay, what matters the most to them? Right? This matters more than that. And there was a tension, right, at certain points. For example, what happens when Black Lives Matter, their favorite, their go-to activist groups, doesn't want to get vaccinated? Doesn't matter. Vaccinations matter more than racial identity politics. What matters more when Kyrie Irving, National Basketball Association player earning $26 million a year, beloved in Brooklyn, doesn't want to get vaccinated? Doesn't matter. You have to stay at home. So at that moment, biomedical fascism mattered more. Okay, well, let's use another example. What happens when Dave Chappelle, a darling of the Hollywood left, gets a Netflix special, black man decides to insult, I wouldn't even say insult, make fun of the transgender alphabet mafia? Oh, no, 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 you can't do that. Doesn't matter if you're black. Transgenderism in this current moment matters more than racial politics. You guys tracking this? It's totally confusing. It's intentionally supposed to be confusing, by the way. It's like this constant reordering of hierarchies. Now, I believe, and this is to go a level deeper, but you guys are smart and you'll get it, the transgender movement actually matters even more than biomedical fascism, and they actually are together, because the transgender movement is an introductory phase to get you to strip yourself of your humanity to mesh with machines. It's called transhumanism. They want you to say, okay, well, I can choose any gender. Why can't I just have like an exoskeleton of some sort of machine around me? This is what Meta is about, the metaverse, kids staring at screens all day long. This is documented, this is proven, this is where Silicon Valley is going. This is why they're so insistent on this transgender thing, because if you stop being a man, then maybe you can stop being a human being. Maybe you can kind of just plug into some sort of machine. This is where their control, their profit motive is coming down the stream. There's a ton of literature about this. I'm far from the first person to comment on it, but I'm just kind of connecting the dots for all of you that might like, what is the agenda here? Well, the agenda is kind of like Ready Player One meets Inception, where you kind of just hook up to a machine all day long and you're controlled by 5 companies that control your thoughts and your feelings, and the real world actually ends up being the not real world, where everyone just kind of wears goggles all day long. That's the deeper significance of the transgender movement that no one wants to talk about. David?